Oh, yeah. We are back. We are back, and the mic is on. I love you guys. I'm super pumped about this. I'm super pumped. Joe Blow, you hear the music. You know what that means. Your boy is back. Has it been a long time? Does it feel like it's been forever? Because it feels that way to me. It bums me out. It breaks my heart. It really does. Because there's part of me that will always love doing 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, engaging with the peeps, that sort of thing. But I'll tell you, I'm loving Meaning of Catholic. Are you? If you're loving Meaning of Catholic, give a ow! Because I do. Every single day. We've got a good show for you. We've got an amazing show for you today. Let me get this music down. I could listen to that jam for a long time. Actually, let's just do that. Let's just do that together. Here we go. It's the day the Lord has made. We're gonna rejoice. We're gonna be glad in it, aren't we? We're gonna howl at the sun. The wolf back! It's back! All of you, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me go ahead and get this monitor back to the right setting. For some reason, the monitor, I need a tech guy. That's what I need. Because basically, the way that it works, I can't, when I have the monitor on the way that I have it when I begin to hear the music, it has this crazy echo. It's like I have two of me bumping at the same time. And I'm like, I mean, sounds pretty good. You know what I mean? Double the pleasure, double the fun sort of thing. But, you know, whatever. Anyway, today is the Wednesday, October 20th edition of Paleocrat Diaries right here at Meaning of Catholic. Every Tuesday and Wednesday, 10ish to noonish, somewhere in there. And today we have an amazing episode for you. But before we even move forward at all, I am going to do, I normally talk for a little bit beforehand, and we're going to do a little bit of that, okay? Not a ton, but we're going to do a little bit of that. But I just want to, I actually want to do the announcement about the Saintmaker first. And I want to thank everybody because, you know, this is new to me, you know, being an affiliate for anybody and working with a group that I love. In fact, that I support, that we use, and not just me, but my family, but it's all new to me, you know, and even being with Meaning of Catholic is still relatively new. Everybody's kind of working out, you know, the kinks and trying to figure out where we are and everything. And so it's been quite a journey, right? But I noticed recently a huge uptick, in the number of people going, and not only the number of people going, but the number of people purchasing them, even if it's pre-ordering. Because look, there's ups and downs and all arounds. They end up being out of stock because lots of people are buying it. But I wanted to say something real quick, because yesterday was the first time that my wife and I actually kind of went through this together. I'd been doing it by myself, and we went through it together. And I'll show you just a little bit. I won't get too close to it. I'm not going to give away all my secrets. But right there, right? That's the seasonal journal here. This, of course, it's teal. It's supposed to be green. It's teal. They're working on that. But we went through a basic review of the previous season to ask ourselves, you know, it says, describe major events and themes and activities of the past season. And I'll tell you, it was so awesome going through that. And because at front and center, right, we've got tons of amazing things going on with the school, tons of amazing things going on with my family, tons of amazing things, even praise reports about my mother-in-law, who was in a very severe and tragic car accident. My brother-in-law died, but my mother-in-law has been making huge progress. I might even, in a special announcement that I'm going to make very shortly, I may even show a video. I'll talk to my wife about it. But just so many things. But right front and center in all of this, you. I went back and was just reflecting on all the things that that we've accomplished since joining Meaning of Catholic. And I started to cry. I did. I was literally crying. I'm like, this is absolutely unbelievable. I cannot even begin to tell you what it feels like and how grateful I am. And how grateful I am every single day for you. And that's why it was awesome to be able to just go through and write those things out. Blessings. I had to put with these little stars, I put see review. Blessings. I listed a whole bunch. I ran out of space. Look at this. I ran out of space. I could have kept going. In fact, I did. I added things to the blessings. but also things to do with failures. What are things, describe major patterns of sin and shortcomings this past season? You know? And insights. What do you believe God is calling you to in this coming season? And that's been a major theme in our home, is what God is calling us to. And today is part of that. Today's episode is part of that, because I have said we can have all the fun in the world. People, it's funny, some people will say, man, you got a great comedy show. I'm like, comedy show? What are you talking about? What are you talking? It's comedic. It's funny. But it's not a comedy show, right? maybe you got to fast forward a little bit. Watch past the intro. I don't know. You know, we have a fun time though, don't we? You know, but I said there was a day, maybe last week or the week before, where it just hit me, and I said I want this to be a wolf pack of prayer. That's what I call it. I said I want it to be a wolf pack of prayer. I want to. I don't want to be a leader. I'm not anybody's leader. I'm a friend. I'm somebody who, you know, I'm here to use my gifts and talents to the best of my ability and to encourage other people to do the same. And to say, look, we're here along the road together. You got a heavy cross, you know, cast your cares on the Lord, and I'll be like the siren that's going to come up right next to you and put my shoulder under that cross with you, and I'll carry it with you. And I am hoping and trusting that you do the same for me. It's why I salute you at the end of every show. It's why I salute you. And so we're in this together. And so I said, you know, I want it to be a matter of prayer. That's what I want. But a lot of times people don't really know how to pray, or they've heard of different methods of prayer, but they think that those are outside their grasp. And I said, no matter what, we can talk about enthusiasm all day. We can talk about secular age. We can talk about Father Lassance's manual for boys and girls, which we're going to do. We could talk about all those things. We could talk about defense of the faith, which we're going to do. All of these things are on the agenda. But if we are not rooted in prayer, and if we are not building each other up and lifting each other up every day, if that's not what we're doing, then I truly believe this is all for naught. I told somebody that. They mailed me and they said, you know, one day I'm really hoping I'll be able to support you. But for now, all I have to offer you is prayers. And I'm like, you've got this real backward. I need that first. I know it's cliche, people saying, well, you know, pray for me and stuff. I'm dead serious. I'm toast if you don't pray for me. I am. God is doing that silly putty thing, stretching me like crazy. You're going to see it. You're along for the ride. It can be painful. There's a lot on our plates here. It's kind of a heavy burden, but I ain't alone. I've got a wolf pack. I do. And I got a Saintmaker. I have a Saintmaker. And speaking of the Saintmaker, here we go. We'll be back in just a moment, and we're going to show you some really cool stuff. And then we've got an interview. And this interview is the long-awaited interview with my boy David. So you're not going to want to miss it. It is extremely important. I'll be here the entire time. We're going to be in the comments. And I've got a huge announcement for you. You do not want to miss this. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this promo for the Saintmaker. Can a personal planner really make you a saint? Not by itself. But in our day and age of addictive apps and glowing screens, we're bombarded by constant distraction, and our quest for sainthood often takes a backseat. The Saintmaker is the first high-performance planner for the spiritual life, made by faithful Catholics for faithful Catholics. It's a work of genius, really, fusing the wisdom of the saints with the science of personal productivity. It's rigorous, but sainthood is tough, and most of us need help organizing our time, our work, our leisure, and our devotion, because that can help you become a saint. The Saintmaker is elegant, fits in your purse or briefcase, and is a perfect companion for your missal, Bible, or rosary. Published 4 times per year, each season includes daily planning pages, feast days and devotions for both forms of the liturgical calendar, goal-setting pages, confession journals, and more. It's why the Saintmaker is used by hardworking Catholics, like CEO of Sock Religious Scott Williams, best-selling author Sam Guzman, YouTubers like Amber Schneider, a Catholic wife Dina Barca, and Brian Holdsworth, and priests like Father Corey Stitcha. Try the Saintmaker out, and if you decide that it's not for you, you can send it back for a full refund within 90 days. So go right now. Find your life planner at thesaintmaker.com. Quantities are limited though, so head on over to thesaintmaker.com to order yours and to start your Saintmaker journey today. All right. Okay, that right there, I tell you, you have to go. You have to go. You got to check it out. It is amazing. As I said, you know, the way that it breaks it down, the way that it has your to-do list, the way that it has issues and what you need to do, your actions that you have, everything, right? It's methodical. It's methodical to the point of rigorous. So you may in fact find that it's too much, that there are things that you don't feel the need or the ability at the time to incorporate. But that's okay. It's at least available. It's all there. So, okay. Now, to the comments real quick, I want to say this. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I see I have the comments opened up here and everything. And it's funny because people were like, you know, asking if I was going to be late and everything. And is the mic on kind of thing. And I'm commenting, and because I'm signed in as Meaning of Catholic, people were wondering if I was Tim Flanders. Yeah, it's Tim. Tim's the one. Tim's the one making all those mistakes. If there's ever a mistake, you got to just blame him. Don't blame your boy. Oh, man. So it's a whole bunch of fun. It's good to see you. Yeah, right here. Let's see. Peter Burke, another day, another echo. Man, it's totally true, isn't it? It's totally true. And it's good to see you, by the way. I am hoping that the interview for you will be ready by Friday, okay? If not, then it will be next Wednesday. Either which way, that interview with Peter Michael Burke Jr. is going to be totally, totally amazing. So you're going to want to have a lot of fun with that. All right, Anthony, Jeremiah has a lot of cooking, a lot of things cooking. It's going to be good. I do, which it's kind of funny because I saw in the comments, Andrea talking about it's such a great show indeed. Too bad there's only 2 episodes left. What are you talking about? Stop spreading misinformation. There's not 2 episodes left. There's 2 presentations. There's 2 chapters left of enthusiasm. But this has only just begun. Your boy is here to stay. I ain't going anywhere. I love this place. I love you guys. Even if I was like, I'm in and out. I'm just here for enthusiasm. I'm going to do a presentation, and then I'm booking it. I'm hitting the road, you know, like some carny or something. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. We have a big thing coming. Actually, patrons over at Patreon voted. Back when there were only 6 of them, they voted they wanted me to talk about Father Lassance, his manuals for young men and young women. Now, that's very good, and I don't want to, you know, cast any shade on the patrons and stuff. They picked the wrong book. No, we're definitely going to do that, but I also want to do secular age. It's one of those things, so I got to figure out a way to do both. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I got a lot coming down the pike. And not only that, but stuff over. I got somebody on my heels. I got the moderator over at the Wolfpack chat, right? Our first moderator ever, Anthony. He's in the comments actually, and he talked to me last night. You know, he's always kind of egging me on to do more. And he goes, "Hey man, you got to crank up that Facebook." And I'm like, I don't know about that. I have a Facebook. I'd rather not, you know, use it very often. Not for this stuff. Not when I have a Telegram. People need to go over to the Telegram. I'm going to show you here in a second. But we have a lot in store. So, and speaking of, you know what? I was going to do something different first, but I'm going to do this instead. Check this out. I don't think I've ever showed this before. So right here, This is the Telegram channel for Paleocrat Diaries. And so if you go to Telegram, it's a free app, totally awesome. Once you figure it out, I don't know if you'll ever even want to go back. Right here is an example. This is a Bible that my dad found on the side of the road. I took some pictures of it. It's a Protestant version of the Bible from the 1800s, but it has the Deuterocanonicals in it. And it has portions of the Bible that, of all my Catholic versions that I own, the only version that has that is the 4-volume original and true JER'S. And this right here is far more luxurious and beautiful than that 4-volume edition. I'm more grateful, of course, for the 4-volume edition, which has amazing notes, annotations, all that stuff. It's unbelievable. When people think that they're reading the JER'S they have in their hand it pales in comparison to the original and true. But the original and true is massive, and it's four volumes long, each one very large. I'll do one of these days. I'll make a video, maybe even over on Telegram, and share it. But you can see some of the artwork. Let me see here. Let me just go ahead and let me click on this and see what happens. Yeah, you can't really see that. Okay. So as you can see, the artwork's just gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Right there, you've got the destruction of Bel and the dragon, the prayer of Manasseh right there, king of Judah. So, I mean, as I said, there are portions of the Bible that you just don't normally see. It forwarded a lot of things that get forwarded from the Wolfpack chat, because it's a whole bunch of fun, right? And pray for this guy. Pray for this guy, Michael Lofton. He's being forced to receive the vaccine. Big deal. It's a big deal for his life, right? So it's a huge, huge issue. He has to deal with that. And a lot of people do. I have a friend in Canada who's kind of going through similar things. So, you know, pray for people. Pray for Michael Lofton. And if you haven't seen my episode, my appearance, my first ever appearance on Reason and Theology, if you missed that, you're nuts. you're crazy bonker town. Okay? Because that episode, it rocked people's socks off. Let's just put it that way. I don't think they knew what was coming, folks. You know, it's one of those things, isn't it? Where people are like, look, you know, it's one of those things where people are like, oh, yeah, I've seen your videos around and stuff, but they really don't know that much, you know, about you and stuff. And other audiences may not know, but they kind of heard, and they're like, oh, yeah, you know, I've heard, I guess I've seen that guy. I've seen some weird thumbnails and such of him. And all of a sudden you go on there and you throw him for a loop. And it was like an hour and 20 minutes of it was just great. And he's such a great host. I mean, he's just an authentic guy, brilliant dude. I was just real honored to be there. So as you can see, it's just a whole bunch of really great stuff. And I post things at times, you know, okay, you've got, for example, that's not the most flattering picture of Tim Gordon or of his cousin, but you know, they can fix their own thumbnails. Come on. What's going on with that? But I've got different images and stuff. Let me see here. Yeah, vintage Paleocrat. These are videos that I made years and years ago. Right? I know some people in the comments might not want to be there because they'll be like, oh, wait a second. What's that word I just read? You know, but it's not just that. It's this. Okay. You've got people in the Wolfpack chat, all different sorts of people talking. Hallelujah's in there. Yeah, so sometimes you got, of course, Anthony, Hallelujah. Oh, wow. It's super, super fun, right? You got Jake Fowler. He's going to be on the show. You've got this dude right here, of course. You got that dude right there, Pax Domini. He's going to be the one we interview today. And it's tons of fun. And at times, I will post things that are just exclusive to that. Like I did an audio the night when I made the thumbnail where it's got the fasci stash, and you know, the Protestants eat themselves alive thumbnail. I got a little chastised for that, by the way. I was pushing the boundaries, I guess I was pushing the boundaries, and they're like, you need to be more normie than that. And I'm like, I don't know, I thought that was pretty normie. That's pretty normal. You know, but anyway, I when I shared that, I was laughing so hard. It was like 2 a.m. And I'm cracking up. I can't stop laughing. I'm basically seeing stars, keeled over, you know, and just cracking up, imagining Tim Flanders waking up early in the morning, you know, 3:30 in the morning. He wakes up, He's pouring his coffee, wiping the sleep out of his eyes, staggering his way over to the glowing screen and clicks on it, and the very first thing he sees is that thumbnail. Yeah, bro. Oh, yeah. So, but you have to join it. And it's crazy. The last thing I'll say about this, right? It says 61 members. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do this. Watch this. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. Paleocrat Diaries, Wolfpack Chat, Media. So these are just different videos and pictures that are shared. You got files, right? Different things that we've shared. Not too many files. Lots of links. Tons of links. And music. You can follow. We have like essentially a playlist. So they're all MP3s. You can download them. It's super dope. And then this is what I'm talking about. You can see these little videos right here. They're just like 1 minute maximum videos and stuff. But I post them all the time. And, we just have a really good time over there. And what's cool about it, somebody could say, well, dude, you got way more followers over on Twitter. You've got way more followers on Facebook. Why aren't you more engaged there? And I say because the people there aren't more engaged. The Wolfpack Chat is straight up engaged. It is on fire. It is on fire. So I'm done promoting that. But you got to go. You have to go. I'm telling you. So it's like, it's one of these things where you got to go and you got to check it out. Okay. Let's go ahead and take out I'm going to remove that so that I don't have, well, no, I don't even have to. It's okay. One more thing before we move on. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, congratulations on the first day of your anti-procrastination plan. Has that been on my tab for a week? We are not talking about this person. Future woman priest, Father Ann. Wow. You want to talk about an enthusiast right there, kiddos. Doesn't that just remind you of what maybe one of George Fox's girly friends would look like? Walking through the streets, maybe barefoot. In the gang of folks ushering in the Lord on the donkey right before the inquisitors come and tie him up and bring him before the court and all that. That's when they lost the power. But this chick, she's in the moment, man. You can tell she's totally into it. She's zoned out. This is enthusiasm 101. Yeah. The moniker Father Ann has helped attract wide media coverage of her coming October 16th ordination ceremony. She's not getting ordained. That's fake. That's totally fake. Oh, man. We all these things. Okay. Right here. Patreon.com/Paleocrat Diaries. You can find stuff like even Off the Record with Tim and Jerry. Of course, that is a patron-only deal. But this right here, folks. This right here. And you're going to need to know this because it actually matters for tonight. It matters for tonight. I'm not just saying this for no reason. This is actually very, very important, okay? Because there's probably going to be an Afterglow show tonight. And by probably, I mean almost definitely. Because rather than editing the interview down, this interview about mental prayer, rather than editing it down into 20 minutes or so, as I was going through it, I said, no way. No way. We're listening to this entire thing. It is too good. It's too important. It's too foundational, not only to this apostolate, but just to our basic lives, just to our basic spiritual well-being, especially in times like these. So you're going to need to go paleocratdiaries.com. I'll post the link to the Afterglow. It'll be made available on YouTube. So if you want to if you're a lazy bum that says, I don't want to go to his .com. I don't want to help support him. And you don't want to go and see the awesome dopeness that is happening over at the website. That's your business, I guess. But of course you can see all these different posts. Okay. Now I didn't post for a while. I didn't post for a while because we had somebody working on the site, and I kind of was under the assumption I wasn't supposed to be posting, but I was wrong. So you can see this now. Look, it includes stuff like this, right? Talking about keeping people up to date. These are just a few of the things that I've been doing in the meantime when the website was not very active. And by not very active, I mean I wasn't posting on there. But this right here And I mentioned the Afterglow show. See, it's in red. So you got to go check it out. There's links to where you can find different things to do with ya boy and the Wolf Pack. And of course, we provided this link yesterday. So you can go there, a bunch of really great stuff. And we've already got this cranking. So you can become a member, just like Patreon. If you don't like Patreon and you want to go through a different place, go through this. It's the exact same tier structure, exact same everything. We have Brianna. She's been working on it. Amazing. She works with Timothy Gordon's website. And so she also works with mine. And she's an amazing person. Very efficient, actually. So you can do that. And if you become a member, you get secret access to the place where me and the boys welcome you to the Paleocrat Diary fan club. It's going to be a bunch of fun, but we do pity the fools who break the rules. So that's just the way that goes. You can't be a clown. You can't be a clown. And lastly, at the website, if you want, you can connect with me about interviews. Donations, of course, are welcome, as well as public speaking, which is trip, lodging, and a free will offering. No problemo. If you're interested in any of that, oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. Look at that guy. Yeah. If you're interested in any of that, contact information. Oh no, my phone number is still on there. You guys did not see that, but you should actually contact Thota Popinski. That's the crisp with a lisp, right out of Russia. Our Russian bot troll in residence. Just call that number. He'll connect you real quick. So you got to go ahead and do that. So all right, we are moving on, everybody. We're moving on to something very, very important, actually. Okay, something very important. Now, I talked last week. Okay, I talked last week about hold on a second. I talked last week about this guy. And I apologized because I meant to have this interview. I meant to have this interview published last Friday. It would have been ideal. It was the feast of Saint Teresa of Avila. It would have been extraordinarily fitting. My daughter's name is Teresa Avila, okay? So it's one of these things where it just would have been fitting, and I dropped the ball. And I felt especially bad because it was an especially awesome interview. And it's, as I said, it's going to be uncut today. I'm not playing around. This is serious business. It's really good. And in fact, I want to talk to him, and I want to talk to him about even becoming just a recognized contributor with Paleocrat Diaries, just to say this guy is something special, man. And we talked after the show, and it was fantastic. But you know, it was one of those things where I felt truly sorry for having dropped the ball, for having been distracted, for having not paid attention to the Saintmaker as I ought to have. And in fact, during those days leading up to it, I wasn't nearly as thorough with the Saintmaker. So it's one of those things. It's true. It's true. Okay? And so it's and not only that, but his parents, man. His parents wanted to know, when's this interview coming out? Because he's excited about it. He's been a fan of the show for a while. He's been following, and as you can see, well, I won't even say it. You have to be really observant. It's like a Where's Waldo moment here, But they wanted to know, and the thing is, he couldn't tell them. And I kept kind of saying, "Oh, I think it's going to be ready at this time." Well, it's ready now. So with no further ado, I don't even need to do any kind of introduction beyond that. We talk about it right at the beginning. So I'm going to be in the comments section here the entire time, okay? I'm not just walking away. I'm not going to go take a nap. I should, but I'm not going to do it. So I'll be in the comments section. But last thing, I saw in the comments, let me see here. Someone said I'm one of the most wholesome Catholic YouTubers. Dude, thank you. I try, man. I legit try. I'm a family guy. Yeah, somebody said they ordered the Knox Bible after seeing this series. They ordered one from Baronius Press. Very, very good. I have an older edition. It's I think from, I don't know, the 60s, I think. So it's a little bit older. But I saw a comment, just real quick, I just wanted to say before I left, before I move on, it was the last thing, and it had to do with, original and true onlyism. I don't know if that was the I don't know if that was the name of it originally, right? The original and true. I don't think that's the case, obviously, right? But it actually is pretty factual, right? That there's given the content, given the content of that particular edition, it's all the original stuff. It's everything that came, the whole enchilada. Nothing was held back. And if people understood how much of the commentary and annotations were removed by later editions, by that people have in their hands when they go to church or when they're reading it at home, if they realized how much of the original commentary was completely obliterated, and if they realize even some of the portions of the scripture that are, as far as I'm aware, are not even in the newer one, just removed. Even the name of Jesus in certain places. There's some serious changes. I'm at least grateful that I have that as a study reference. It is, in my opinion, the single best study Bible that has ever been made. I don't know of any study Bible better than that. But it's big and it's in 4 editions. It's huge. Maybe I'll go grab one of them so that after the interview I can show it on the screen. Okay. Or it's going to be during tonight's Afterglow show, because tonight, I think it'll probably be around 8 o'clock. So and it won't be 2 hours. I won't do it full 2 hours. It won't require it. We're just going to stick strictly with the Montanus. I just didn't want to rush through anything today. And I wanted to allow this to be what it is. So with no further ado, here we go. I'm going to shut my yapper and go into the comments. So here we are. I know I talk a lot about theology and history and stuff like that, but my degree is mass communication. So journalism and mass comm with a minor in political science. And most of my life's work has been rooted in those things.
Right.
And so when you talked about the modern world and how it affects us, it was good. It was a fantastic way to end. I would have given you a standing ovation, buddy. So thanks. I would have. I was really excited about it. So okay. So before we begin,
I just wanted to let you know I'm part of the Yellow Book Club.
Oh, dude, yes.
Man. This cost me like $50 Canadian, but it's in the queue. Now I got a lot of books in the queue.
Where'd you get that?
Amazon.
Like, Amazon. Is it the same brand and everything? I'm assuming so.
Well, same cover.
Yeah.
Notre Dame Press, UNDP.
Yeah. That's what that is. I was like, I've never heard of UNDP. I didn't even think to. Yeah, right there, University of Notre Dame Press. Yeah, wow. I'm a real bibliophile.
Dude, but you can't see this, but off camera, I have like stacks of like reference books, so like reference material when you're gonna ask about spiritual reading and stuff like that. But that's only like part of my book collection. Like you can see, like
look at that.
It's extensive. I think St. Francis de Sales calls it spiritual avarice, and that's my problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hoarding of religious things.
I'll tell you, I'm with you. I've actually had to start being cool about giving stuff away, and that has been it was a big challenge. I've gone through many phases, where you tell yourself, because I'm fortunate in a way because I can do giveaways.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you were the first person to become a patron. Well, guess what? You get choose a selection from the treasure trove here at my personal library. So I was going through my library, man. I was making every excuse in the world. I was like, I might reference that book one day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not. I'm never going to reread it. I'm never going to reference it. I've got better books than that to deal with. And I'm like, I need to just be okay. But I also, sometimes, I may want to keep something, but I may not necessarily have to.
Yeah.
And I kind of took the note from the priest that gave me his personal copy of Enthusiasm to say, this was an important book to him. He enjoyed this book. He liked it a lot, but he felt that I needed it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, there's a life lesson for me. So I started taking books that were important to me, instrumental in my life, but books that, to be quite frank, I may never go back to reread, or more importantly, do a series on. Yeah. That's kind of my standard at this point. If I'm not going to do a series on it, or if I've already done a series. Now, I will not. I'm not letting go of enthusiasm unless I have somebody as near and dear as the situation was with me and the priest.
My confessor is the same. He said, you know, just to curb your spiritual avarice. If you finish something and you think it'll be helpful, give it away. Like, be ready to let go of that materialism, right?
Now, I did let go. That's the last thing I'll say about it. I did let go one time. I think I gave a guy like 20 books, and he was one of my few Catholic friends when I was an atheist that, you know, he was our barista at first. He worked at the coffee shop up the road. So we didn't know he was Catholic. I had no clue. And we just became friends. He knew my daughter and stuff, and we always went in there. And over time, it became quite obvious that he knew I was an atheist, and I became aware that he was a Catholic. So we had these really cool conversations because I didn't have many like religious friends. And that's partially my fault because I was so rabid in my anti-theism. And so it made sense a little bit, but he saw within me not only like, hey man, this guy's a decent guy, but also that there was more than just fragments of the religiosity of years past, right? That customs, ideas that we understood, family or parenting, gender, you know, abortion, the political economy in general. I mean, I was the atheist guy saying Leo the 13th was like the best. So that's just true. I mean, that's for real. So he saw that. Well, right before I came back to the church, man, probably 3 months before, I was like, I want to give these books away. And I said, I think he really liked these. I had some really good ones, man. Some of them from Scott Hahn, because he sent me, at the time, it would have been the complete collection of it. Like, so any book he'd written, he sent to me in a big box and everything. And it was really great. We used to talk on the phone and stuff. And I gave him some of those, not all of them. And I gave him a missal that later on I had to switch out for one because I accidentally gave him my wife's. So when we came back to the church, my wife is like, "Where's my 1962?" And I'm like, "What?" Like, so gave it away. All right. So first and foremost, first thing, I know it's literally on the top of everybody's mind. How in the world do you pronounce that last name?
Cholewa.
Cholewa.
Yeah.
I was going to say Holeva, so Cholewa. That's out of the way. Second thing, give us a little bit of background as to who you are, because we're going to talk here in just a moment. We're going to talk about something really cool, and I'll tell people real quickly what it is. I'll even show them. Yeah, I'm not joshing anybody. Look at this. See this? This is fantastic. It's going to be made available too.
Yeah, and I give you license to edit that because I know there's some hiccups in here and there. So
okay, yeah, we'll do. But overall, hey, it was meant for a lecture.
Yeah,
right, meant for a lecture. And so right here, how to grow in closer relationship with Christ using Saint Teresa of Avila's method of meditation. This was done February 29th, 2020. We're going to talk about this in just a minute, but just real quickly, just as kind of a background to you. Yeah. Who are you, man? What are you about?
What am I?
Yeah. What are you? Yeah.
So I, as I do in confession, I'm a single man in my late 20s. Before I start confessing my sins, but so for context, but no, I professionally I am a public practice accountant. I specialize in audit and tax. Winter of 2019, so early in the year, it must have been January. I had a St. Paul moment. I was I don't know. I just had a St. Paul moment. I was in a relationship, and after months of me figuring, like, getting up off the ground and dusting myself off and figuring out, like, why did I have this black eye from God? It led to an ultimatum. The relationship ended, and then off I went onto my Catholic journey. So since then, given my professional field, I love the academic side of the faith, and my newly made friends, because I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you go Catholic, you burn your entire social circle. It's purgative, in a good way, but purgative. And so my new circle of friends, my Catholic friends, took notice that I was picking things up really quickly in the faith and able to speak eloquently about them and explain them in a way that made sense to them. And it came to the point a year later, February 2020, there was a Lenten retreat at our Newman College here in town. And I was invited to do a lecture on prayer entering into the Lenten season.
Yeah. So and whereabouts are you?
I am in Edmonton, in
You're in
Alberta.
Edmonton. Yeah, Alberta. You know, I'll tell you, it's kind of cool, man. I've since coming back to the faith, I think I've met more Canadians like than I did in all the years that I was doing videos and blogs and everything else, you know, talking about the faith and everything. I think I've met more since coming back, and even since being with Meaning of Catholic and stuff. It's just, and maybe part of that is the lockdowns, like the global ramifications of this and how it's caused alliances even across borders. They were like, look, we're with you guys, you know. Yeah, and of course you're crazy prime minister and stuff. I mean, that's a real deal. And so we like making fun. But it's so okay. I'm very glad that has happened. It's a bummer always, in a way, right? It's always a bummer to get the black eye. It's always a bummer to have to go through something where a relationship is cut off, including with a lot of friends, man. And I think that's just part of the group dynamic in general, like the way groups behave. You know, I remember growing up, they used to say, well, you don't have to get rid of your friends. Your friends will want to be around you. And I have to say, it's actually true also of like if you become an atheist, your Christian friends, most of them won't want to be around. You know, they might pray for you, but it hurts to see you that way. They know you in a certain way. They expect a certain thing. They want to talk a certain way, and it makes them uncomfortable if they're in a room with a guy that they love and that they've been friends with, and all of a sudden he's talking, you know, saying really outrageous, blasphemous things.
Yeah.
That you'll find yourself just gradually apart, and you'll have stragglers. Like I have some friends who are atheists who to this day remain my friends, but comparatively, not many from before. And it was the same thing, of course, with Catholicism. But it's good in a way. It's good because you know you have to find your place in your home, and who are you, where are you, what's your surroundings, what is this all about? And that's kind of, in fact, what this is. You find yourself in a different plane, right, in a spiritual domain. And you're saying, okay, it's not just the material issues, it is matters to do with meditation, contemplation, the divine. And we need help because we live in a world that is so secular, so materialistic. And so I think that it's not only a good topic, I think it's timely. So, all right. So we're going to stick with this. And as I said, this will be made available at the release of this video. But break it down one by one. Okay, let's start at the beginning. What exactly is the purpose of mental prayer?
Right. So the purpose of mental prayer is to, as Saint Teresa of Avila notes it, really simply. And you'll notice that when, you know, great saints are asked these difficult questions, they give really simple answers because like God is simple, right? Like the St. John writes, God is love, God is life, God is light, right? There's deeper truths within these particular statements. And so St. Teresa of Avila says, mental prayer is in essence just a conversation with Christ. And why is that important? And the way I like to kind of parallel it is you can think of mental prayer as just having a relationship with any other person that you love, right? So you as a married man, you understand the intricacies of a relationship with another person, right? And us discussing this method of how to enter into mental prayer and the steps that are there are a little funny to talk about because we're, you know, almost equating it to how do I talk to a girl or how do I make friends? Like it's, you know, the saints can provide general rules, like for example, be polite, smell nice, compliment them, you know, things like that. They provide kind of things for you to fall back on. But in essence, what we're doing here is because Christ became incarnate, he wanted us to recognize that bodily reality and that closeness that we actually do contain his image and likeness. The purpose here is to enter into this familiar relationship because Jeremiah, pop quiz, what is heaven? it's a perpetual gazing upon the face of God.
Yes. Yeah.
And perpetual adoration. And if you ask most secularists, they're like, man, heaven sounds boring.
Right. Yeah.
But that's kind of what we're going for. We're looking to be in that face-to-face contact with God and build that relationship while we're here now, in anticipation of the perpetual face-to-face contact. You know, many saints have said that this life is but the thinnest of veils before the face of the Lord. It's only on the other side of death that we actually see the face, but we can enter into that relationship now.
Yeah, like a taste of heaven.
That's right.
Right, a taste of heaven, a glimpse, a little sneak peek. And it's one of these things where it's funny the way how you brought up. I was thinking the same thing about that. It's almost like, how do you impress a girl or a guy kind of thing. And there's this intimacy because the conversation is intimate. Okay. And especially we're talking Saint Teresa of Avila. I mean, with her ecstasies, so anyone can see. I just shared today. I shared the beautiful statue, right, with the angel above her like that. You know, it's one of my favorite in the world. And yet, you know, if you look at that, I can imagine certain people seeing that, and without wishing to sound like I'm over the line, to say it looks sensual. Mm-hmm. You know, that the ecstasy that she's in. She's elated, right? She's overwhelmed. It's passionate looking. It's beautiful, but also overwhelming, right? Like a woman fainting in love. And in fact, it was with the Lord, right? Like, so it was with the Lord. So yes. And so in a way, when people are talking about it, and I got this, I just started reading Interior Castle, and I don't know why I never read that. I named my daughter Teresa Avila, and I'm like, why? What was I thinking? You know? And so, started reading it, and over she says in there that it's really difficult for her to explain some of this, even though she experiences it, to try to communicate it to another person, and that really you got to do it yourself. And I felt like, staying on the theme of you know, the boys and the girls, I said it's a little bit like talking about birds and bees with some kids. I said, you can only say so much. In the end of the day, you're like, look, you just got to just do it when you're old enough, right? In the proper setting, the proper preparation, right? You got to reflect on this stuff, but you have to have that union at some point. If that's your calling in life, your vocation in life, to be a married person, then that's what's going to happen. But I can only tell you so much to prepare you for that. But eventually you have to make that step. Do you feel like, is that something you've taken from that? The idea is not just, gather a bunch of knowledge, but at some point you just got to do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, but you also have to consider our nature, right? So God made us in this particular way, in his image and likeness. And so if we compare it to something rudimentary in our natural kind of life, right? We're all meant to walk, right? But it's our bodies are designed to use these biped kind of structure, right? We're meant to walk, we're meant to use these legs, and that's just part of our nature. So consider all the more real the fact that God made us in his image and likeness, infused us with a soul, gave us a will and an intellect. And even Aristotle, a pagan, prior to Christ, said, the highest end of a human is the contemplation of good, right? He said happiness is only derived by the contemplation of higher things. So he understood the fact that our nature is made in such a way that he just didn't plug with the logos question, and right. The logos didn't get plugged into Greek culture until till the Gospel of St. John, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're almost able to make the claim that for us to not pray is contrary to our nature. Because God has given us all these faculties, and we know that the highest end is to give our faculties back to God. That's the greatest holocaust that we can give outside of our lives, right? As Saint Thomas Aquinas writes, I wanted to make a holocaust of my life. I wanted to make a whole burnt offering of self. Well, for those of us in the world, we can give what we've been given, and that's our will and intellect. And that's exactly what mental prayer is. It's the application of that to God in relationship with God.
It's funny. Well, one thing that's really funny, you're gonna require me to literally beep those words out. You want YouTube to tackle me full hardcore. You're like, it's a Holocaust. I'm
Okay.
like, I know. No, I'm joking. I don't care. I know what you're saying, and you're right. And that's the most robust word for it. So yes, YouTube can shove it. All right. So why do you think? And this wasn't on my list of questions, but it just, why do you think it is that people struggle so much to do this, like that they just contemplating God, just getting in that place where you're even trying to have a robust relationship rather than just learning a lot about him? Because it seems like, and maybe the best analogy, when I'm writing a book, and I can tell you it's an emotional topic for me, right? And it's a novel. I'm almost done now. I should have been done forever ago, but I'm almost done. And it's one of these things where in the lead up to it, I bet you I spent months and months and months just reading about how to write a book. I'd been writing forever, man. Yeah. I had a fan base of people literally begging me, or when is this coming out? When is this coming out? I'm like, it's coming quick, guys. I'm just, reading about how to write. And I feel like a lot of people stall themselves out on that, and they get all this information and they don't put it in practice. When you were writing this, did you think about that? Like, what are different reasons why people may have for not engaging in this and rather just kind of being stalled out on the part of thinking about doing it?
Yeah. So, our church has provided us with answers to this. And that's one of the beauties of the Catholic faith is, we have 2,000 years of really smart people answering these questions for us.
Yeah.
And what I recently learned is actually really amazing is we know the 4 cardinal virtues, right? Prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. The fall of man after the sin of Adam and Eve have 4 equal and opposite wounds as a result of the original sin. And the one that particularly hits us is with respect to prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. I think it's prudence. The virtue of prudence, the equal and corresponding wound is ignorance. And the one with respect to prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, the other one of temperance is the fact that we have a concupiscible nature now.
Yeah.
So the ignorance hits the intellect and the concupiscence hits the body, right? And so for us to actually break past that mental barrier requires a lot of effort on our part, right? So one example I like to use is the fact that we have the Shroud of Turin that exists, right? If we were truly engaging our intellect in its fullest capacity, everyone would be Catholic.
Yeah.
Right? The Shroud of Turin is like undeniable
right.
of the resurrection and the life of Christ.
Yeah.
But even us as Catholics, we can look at the Shroud of Turin and be like, oh, that's cool. Forget it an hour later and commit a mortal sin. Right? So these are things that we constantly have to battle with, and that's just wounds of our nature. Secondarily, we know that prayer is a spiritual combat, right? We have a classic book written on it, right? And so we know that we're always going to be trying to pull away from it by both our flesh, the worldly passions that we have, but also the devil's also trying to make a play on us too, right? Because mental prayer is almost like that scene out of the Matrix where you have that wire kind of like plugged right into your head. That's what mental prayer is. And do you think the devil wants that from us? No, he doesn't want that, right? So there's an active battle for our single most important commodity, and that's time. Time is the only thing we've been given, and time is the only thing that we can really truly expend, and the only thing that we can really take away from another person. So if we want to plug into God with that time, the devil's going to make a fight to make sure we don't.
Yeah, and it's in the Interior Castle, it talks about that right from the gate, literally, from kind of the moat around it, that there's all these monsters, slithering creatures and fanged things and, all sorts of claws and such. And they're always just trying to get you because they don't want you to get inside. And that we, strangely enough, find ourselves just preoccupied in that space. And you're like, what are you doing? The Lord's in there. You got to go. So let's say a person is at the place in their heart and in their mind. They say, okay, I'm done reading about it or thinking about it or telling people to do it. I'm going to do it myself. First things first, is this the same thing as vocal prayer? Like when they start engaging in this, is it just, sitting down the way we customarily think and practice prayer, like before a meal or after a meal or before bed? anything like that, or is there something different about this?
It's something different, and vocal prayer has a time and a place. So, for example, after communion, I love to reflect on St. Thomas Aquinas's Adoro te Devote, where he compares our Lord to a pelican, like ripping off pieces of his flesh to feed. And it's just a beautiful image. And so
Yeah.
we have all this rich imagery and poetry from very holy people that kind of help us spur into contemplation. But as I said, uh, we have to compare it to like a relationship with another person, right? So we can only read so much flowery poetry. We can only give so many Hallmark cards
Yeah.
to our admirer.
Yeah.
But at some point, the heart has to speak, right? We have to use our own words. We actually have to talk to the girl, right? So this is what this is. It takes a step beyond reliance on others and other structures, and it plunges us into the depths of the water, right? At some point we just got to swim, right? We
Yeah.
can read about swimming, we can float around, we can try to tread water, but at some point we just got to dive in. um
I
but
like that idea better than I was thinking cover bands.
yeah.
I said, you when people first start to play music, a lot of them will learn, basic A C E G. People learn different songs. I remember one of the first things I ever learned was Polly by Nirvana, right? It was an
Mhm.
easy one to play. And my buddy told me, here it is, you can play this. So I played it. But it's good to study the riffs and the solos of different groups. But at the same time, there comes a point where unless you want to be a cover band only, you may want to start playing some music on your own. And when you're having a relationship with our Lord that is supposed to be intimate and a friendship, like you mentioned in the lecture, uh, um, talking about where he says he's not calling us to be servants but friends, right? I call you now not servants but friends. And I thought, what a powerful thing that if that's the case, then really we do need to play a new song to him, play one from our heart, and not just covering the greatest hits. And that's not bad. He's always going to love that, right?
Mhm.
He's always going to love the prayer equivalent of Freebird or Stairway to Heaven. Like we have tons of saints. That's maybe the best one. Stairway to Heaven, right?
Yeah.
Freebird, they're both good. I'll take both.
Yeah.
But but eventually, what he really wants, he made you, he made me, and he wants us to speak to him. So okay, so we can use vocal prayer then, right? So we can use it to guide us, to give us ideas, but eventually as a mechanism to help us that when we are in that place of mental prayer that we're using our own words.
Yeah. You also look at the fact that God loves variety, right? Like look at nature. He made all these like millions of bugs. Right? Who needs all these bugs? And the same way, you look at all these saints. No saint is one and the same. They all have different charisms. There's always something different that makes them unique. And different ones may speak to us in a different way, but it just kind of comes to show that God has each person in mind to have a different kind of relationship with them. And you see this with family and friends. Everyone has a different temperament. Everyone has a different personality, and each thing makes them beautiful in their own way. And this is what is meant to be drawn out of us in mental prayer. God infused this personality, these particular sorrows, this particular delight that comes from our heart, and that's supposed to come out and be brought back to Him. And we can only use other people's words to express that. As we said, at some
Yeah.
point you just got to do it. You just got to be the saint that you were meant to be.
At some point he wants to be your friend. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine if you were a real friend, I guess, and you're hanging out and all you're doing is quoting other friends.
Yeah.
At some point you'd be like, "Look, dude, do you want to talk to me or something? Like, do you want to say something to me?" And if you had the Lord in the room, I mean, give me a break, son. Like you would, what wouldn't you say to him? I mean, there was a lot of things you wouldn't say, but
Totally.
you know what I mean. Like there'd be so many things you'd want to say, and it's so funny. So many people will say, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask the Lord this, and I'm like, why not try now? Like there'll be things reserved for when we see things more clearly.
Yeah.
But, maybe it's not that he doesn't want to tell you. Maybe it's that you're not providing a place to where you're even listening.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so what is mental prayer not? Okay, so
Right.
it may be many things, but what exactly is it not?
So in my lecture, I write that it's not meant to be an examination of conscience, right? So we're not supposed to go into mental prayer and just kind of use this time to reflect on our sins, use it for preparation for whatever else. This is time, as we said, specifically devoted for something else. It's not a time for us to do spiritual reading, and it's not time for us to reflect on different rules and our conduct, right? So it's easy to fall into these traps too, because we use later on, I'll point out that Saint Teresa of Avila says, let's use reading material as a method to engage. But that's not the purpose of this time. The purpose of this time is ultimately the conversation.
The encounter.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
So we have to keep that front of mind. Everything else we do in the spiritual life, like an examination of conscience, that's a good thing, but it has its own time and place. Spiritual reading is good, but again, its own time and place. This is something different. It's if you can drill in conversation into your head that this is what this is, you'll do well.
I'm so glad, and it's very timely. I just finished a couple weeks ago. I finished off I think I did 3 episodes dedicated to quietism, Madame Guyon, Fenelon, stuff like that. And it was one of those things. I was heavily influenced when I was younger as a Protestant. In fact, it was kind of my first step into anything remotely Catholic, because, and I always thought she was a real weirdo, in a good way. She stood out from every other book I'd ever read because there was something just, it didn't click. I'd never heard people talk this way before. I never heard anything like that. And it's like, well, she's a Catholic that took an otherwise good thing too far. And it ended up creating something where she had a whole host of propositions that needed condemned. Yet she was still the same kind of person who would say, I'm signing off on that, and would spend the rest of her life, for maybe the first time ever, in silence in a cloister, okay? And she obeyed, and she did it. So, whatever happened at the end of her life, her writings, though, were something really, really different to me. But there was something missing. And that missing part and was that it was such an overhaul of everything I'd ever learned, right? And not all of it bad, even as a Protestant, the idea of vocal prayer, for example. That's something I got to give it up to a lot of Protestants. They don't like read prayers, many of them, where they're written, right? They don't like that. They feel that it's inauthentic and stuff. So they don't understand the value of the written prayer. They don't understand. They think they're all, these amazing. It would be like taking the idea of the musician and being like, oh, so you just think you're the greatest guitarist in the world all of a sudden. Like, no offense, this guy knew how to pray. Okay, like, you should read it. You should actually pray it and try praying it from the heart. It's really good. But with the Quietists, it was so focused on the quiet. It was so focused on no thoughts. Not even, you don't even imagine. You don't use words. You don't anything. And when I started reading, Saint Teresa of Avila, when I did that, I very, very quickly, I could almost, without wanting to sound too, mushy gushy and stuff, you can feel why she is a saint and Guyon is not. I said, you can see it because there's a balance to it. It says, they never coming against examination of conscience, just saying this is not the time for it. Or not coming against vocal prayer, or saying you can use vocal prayer, but only in the beginning and only for this reason, and it kind of sets the tone and stuff. And so everything has a place, everything has a role, and it's not this overemphasis, i.e. enthusiasm, into one hobby horse, which Guyon had. So I love that. I love that, you mentioned what it's not. It's not examination of conscience. That's another thing. And I like how you compared it with Monteber, saying it's just good for us to be here.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what, and I don't know, did you get that? I didn't see any quote from anybody. Did you get that from a specific person, or you pulled that one out? That's a good one.
So this lecture is largely just based on the work of or rather just Peter Rohrbach, Conversation with Christ.
Yeah.
Lays it out kind of in the way that I laid it out in my lecture, but just for something to consume and go, right? Not everyone has the time to read this, but I kind of took the ideas and some of St. Teresa of Avila's writing and kind of placed into there. So I can't take credit for pulling that out of my Bible. But no, it's a common sentiment, right? Like, it's, you're in Eucharistic adoration, or, praying after communion. It's just good. It's just good to be in the moment with our Lord.
Yeah.
Understanding that, yeah, he's with you, he's in you in the most like intimate way.
So what is the reason why the church has placed such extraordinary emphasis on mental prayer? I mean, we can tell right away, you know, you're wanting to become more intimate in your friendship with the Lord, right? And we can rattle off a lot of reasons why that would be good. And I think most people would find them, the majority of those things, flowery, right? They would
Yeah.
say, you know, the feel good things about that make you better, and you know, he died for you, so you should be buddies and stuff,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Um, but what are other things that the saints have said regarding the importance and even maybe even the necessity of mental prayer?
Right. So I'll give some quotes, which I give in the lecture. So it's St. Alphonsus Liguori, a doctor of the church, particularly of moral theology. He's written a lot of stuff with respect to that. He states that it is morally impossible for those who neglect meditation to live without sin. Meaning, if you don't engage in this intimate prayer, you can't hope for a life without sin. And Saint Teresa of Avila kind of backs it up, saying, you know, those who neglect mental prayer need not a devil to carry them to hell, but they bring themselves there with their own hands. So those are some rough words.
Yeah, that's
rough.
not messing around. That's not the flowery part.
Yeah, that's
everybody
not
else
flowery
took care of the flowery. Alphonsus shows up. He's like, no, not flowery.
No,
Yeah, right.
no.
Yeah.
But why is it that they say that? So we can kind of go into this idea that meditation kind of serves two purposes, right? So it aids the soul in conversation with Christ, which has kind of been, you know, the first part of this conversation, but it prevents a relapse into sin. And why is that? Right? So it pertains to that first idea, right? When we grow in closer friendship with Christ, sin becomes all the more repulsive, right? So you kind of see this with our own human relationships too, right? There's this common axiom: you'll only go as far as your 5 closest friends. And so if you have holy friends, one of them being Christ, you're going to do well to kind of get to where they're going, right? But if you have worldly surroundings, and this is kind of something that we'll touch on later, but if you don't engage in this divine light, you're going to be pulled towards what is not the divine light. And as we mentioned, there's a war going on for your soul. If you're not tapping into the wellspring, you're gonna be taken over.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Saint Teresa of Avila here says,
Yeah.
I'm certain of it that our Lord will eventually bring to the harbor of salvation those who give themselves to prayer. And so there's kind of a guarantee, right? You get a stamp of approval from a doctor of the churches. If you do this, you'll be all right. Like you'll finish the race. You'll do well. It's because if we engage in this friendship with Christ, you're going to be molded into what he wants you to be, right? He's a good influencer. Christ is the best influencer around.
It's funny because like I can hear the Calvinists howling right now over some of these quotes and be like, oh, so if you don't do this kind of prayer, then you're not going to make it safely to harbor. Well, that's not very, you know, that where's grace in all of that? Where is the faith in all of that? And you're like, that's why you're praying. That's why you're praying. You have faith, number one. You love the Lord, number two. And number three, you literally really need his grace, because if you don't have his grace, we find ourselves back at the trough with this the swine. Okay. We do this all the time. And it kind of smacks in a weird way with the Calvinists too, because I'd say, what? So do you believe you can do it on your own lights? You know, so you're saying you don't need, the antithesis being you would not need to pray. You would not need the grace we're asking for. And and maybe you'll fall, maybe you won't. Does it really matter? And not even most Calvinists would believe such things. And so again, I feel like I love the wisdom of the saints for this reason. Like you said, you know, they can say something so simple and yet there's so many layers. They can say something that's specifically dealing with an admonition regarding, you know, to the Catholic person, say, look, you know, you guys, you need to pray and love the Lord and be, you know, intimate with him to show him you love him because he's your savior and redeemer and king. And if you do that, that's going to lead you safely to harbor. If you don't do that, then you're kind of thinking you can do it on your own, and that's a real chump move. It's also stupid because it doesn't work. So we're helping you out, but it doesn't only help people on that level. It also ends up in, unsurprisingly, these are doctors of the church. It also goes about, you know, weeding out heretics and stuff. So it's like a double-edged sword with all these saints all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, St. Teresa of Avila's spiritual director, St. Peter of Alcantara, who also has a really good book on prayer.
Show that one more time so people can see.
It's called The Golden Treatise on Mental Prayer. The Golden Treatise on Mental Prayer.
Yeah.
And he has a really beautiful quote on mental prayer, which I've included in my lecture. It goes as this. In mental prayer, the soul is purified from its sins, nourished with charity, confirmed in faith, and strengthened in hope. The mind expands, the affections dilate, the heart is purified, truth becomes evident, temptation is conquered, sadness dispelled. The senses are renovated, drooping powers revive, tepidity ceases, the rust of vices disappears. Out of mental prayer issues forth like living sparks those desires of heaven which the soul conceives when inflamed with the fire of divine love. Sublime is the excellence of divine or of mental prayer. Great are his privileges. To mental prayer, heaven is opened. To mental prayer, heavenly secrets are manifested, and the ear of God is ever attended. So if you ever needed like a better marketing campaign for mental prayer, there it is.
Yeah. And it's transformative. I mean, right out of that, you mentioned in the lecture, but you could pull it straight from that. Sum that up. It's transformative. It's transformative because it's a direct encounter with the King of Kings and the Redeemer of all mankind, the Savior, the Creator of the universe. Right? So it's all of these things to us, and it transforms us in a way that provides us. And I love the way you use the word. It changes the lens through which we see all of life. I use that metaphor all the time when talking about, you know, the way that we view the world, our worldview, and saying these are the lenses through which we view everything. This is, you know, these are that network of presuppositions, and what mental prayer does is it helps to transform that, and it says, look, you're seeing things not right. You're all sorts of messed up on some of this, and you only get that clarity with the greater amount of light that is flushed into the room, and that only happens the closer you draw yourself to the Lord. So all right, all of that great pitch. Everybody's going, okay, look, I'm sold. It's a great commercial. I love the sound of mental prayer. How do I get started? First of all, I guess, what are some things that we have to overcome? Intellect and will, for example. And so break that down real quickly. Just intellect, will.
Intellect, will. So as we know, the intellect and the will are what differentiate us as humans from every other creature that God created, right? So he infused humans with a soul, but he also gave us the intellect and the will. So the intellect deals with reason and thought and things like that, and the will, or St. Teresa of Avila kind of equates it to the heart, is occupied with love, affection, and it's ultimately what draws our passions, right? We know our passions are driven by a choice to do things, right? This interplay between the intellect and the will is kind of how we come to do anything, and it's where we begin to love things. So the intellect, you have to know something to love something, right? Like, I can't say that I love
it. To truly love it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, man, I really love this TV show, right?
Yeah.
Like, the colloquial phrase, because people can say, well, you love stuff, bad things. And you're like, that's not love. You need, So we're being really clear about that. The true love, okay?
True love. So so we can equate this to like any relationship, right? Like, superficially, like, I can like someone, I can love what they do, but it's only when I know them on a more intimate level does that love grow more intimate, right? And vice versa, right? I can have great knowledge of something, but it's entering kind of into this will of wanting to love it. And so the two kind of feed each other, right? I need to know something to love it, but furthermore, for me to kind of love it greater, there's the intellect that needs to be supplied by it. So both faculties are really engaged in mental prayer. And for example, many saints will speak about how they reflect upon the passion of our Lord, right? I think many of the great saints say, you know, the greatest school of theology and the greatest school of love is in just simply glancing upon a crucifix. There's so much to draw from that. But
which is why I love the prominent place it has inside of churches.
Right.
Like when it's right centered, you know, you look up and you see it. It's not in any weird funky place. It is just wham right in front of you. Yeah. That you can gaze on that and it's endless. Yeah. It's endless. I did today. I was in line for confession. It's one of those things. And I was sitting there and I'm like, I looked up at it and I just gazed and just so many thoughts and so many feelings welled up. And then after confession, I go back out and I remember I closed my eyes and I was thinking to myself, like, you know, trying to kind of get in the zone, you know, imagining. And I thought, at this moment, I don't actually have to. At this moment, it might actually just be beneficial for me to return back to step one. I don't know if it's step one. You have some good steps in here, but the step where you sometimes will gaze upon an image, right? And so to say that would be, what during in recollection to say, you know, small crucifix, rosary, sacrament, all that kind of thing. And I looked up and it was so powerful. I had the rosary in my hand and I just started crying. And I think that the person in front of me actually was a newcomer. I think they were a visitor because they were very confused by the standing and sitting and stuff. They were like looking around like, what in the world? I don't know if they even enjoyed it, but the lady turned around. She had a baby in her arms and stuff. She turned around there. I'm just crying. And I almost just wanted to say, the crucifix, just look at it. You got to do it because it's true. What you're saying is true, man.
Yeah. And just to put it more concretely, like we can look upon a crucifix and there our intellect is supplied with, oh, that's the Lord. He suffered for me. And this provides feed for the heart from which to draw affection, right? So when we internalize Christ suffered for me, out of love, this draws a loving response. It's an invitation to a conversation. It's an invitation to greater intimacy, right? Because it's already there.
Yes, dude. And I love how, and people, I hope people notice this, you know, I mean, people watching this probably have watched the show, right? There's a good possibility. And if they haven't, they need to. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, they need to, man. That's my own self, you know, my own pitch. But the thing is that one thing we've noticed over and over and over again is Catholicism is holistic in the sense that it is the entirety, right? That why make an either or out of a good both and? Because you have some people that say don't get the mind involved. That'd be the quietest folks, right? Then you have the more rationalistic folks that are like, you don't want to get the affections, you don't want to get any of the emotions. Oh, those are below us. You know, we're so stoic that there's no role for any kind of sensation, right? It's detached, right? We're like a floating brain. And Catholicism's like, God made us as a fusion. We are a fusion of these, and these can work harmoniously. Just because they oftentimes do not does not mean that the Lord is not able to make these things flow like a symphony that work together, that build on each other without crushing or annihilating or absorbing the other. And so to hear you describe that, fantastic. Okay. What can we do when people start this? Because we already know people are going to go, this sounds great. They've already been sold on it, buddy. Cool. You did a good job this far. And the Saints, of course, you're on the shoulders of giants, okay? What can we do to get our focus under control? Because I can tell you, you know already, that is one of the hardest things in the world, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's lay out the fact that Saint Teresa of Avila has a 5-step process. So she takes this entire supernatural, not mystical experience, but something that's supernatural. Let's just leave it as supernatural. She takes this entire supernatural conversation and breaks it down to 5 simple rules, right? And so the first rule dives into the preparation aspect. It's step 1, preparation. So we can't just jump into mental prayer with us being busied and hurried with the rest of our concerns and all this worldliness, right? Because, you know, as we get from so many saints, and even the likes of Robert Cardinal Sarah, right, saying, you know, silence is where God is experienced, right? You know, we have that Old Testament thing, you know, God was not in the mountains, he was not in the earthquake, he was not in the wind, but he was in the gentle quiet, right? Or I don't quite remember how the verse goes, but it's, you know, we experience God in the quietest of moments, right? This big and mighty God is but a whisper in the soul, right? It's an interesting paradox, and paradoxes are something that kind of will come up across in our journey in Catholicism.
Yeah.
So preparation kind of consists in slowing down. You know, we can't just, you know, come home from work and just dive into mental prayer. You know, it requires us to kind of shut off all the external realities that we're living in, right? So what Saint Teresa of Avila says, and we'll just jump right into step one, is you need to have a frame of mind that this is important, right? You need to be convinced that mental prayer is important. And as we kind of laid out in the quotes, you know, you're convinced, you're sold. The second thing is, well, we are creatures of habit, right? And we have really good habits and we have really bad habits. You know, we all maybe are guilty of hitting the snooze button too many times.
Yeah.
Or we might have our own vices that we're trying to get over, right? These we're habitual by nature. And so why not use this habitual nature that we're given for prayer? And so many saints say, do mental prayer at the same time every day. Because once you start doing it and you omit it, you will internally know, there's a piece missing out of my day, right? And so for some, it's easier in the morning, some in the evening. So like my spiritual director, when he was in the seminary, he loved to pray in the evening. I'm a morning guy, so
I could never do it in the evening. Yeah.
I'll pray in the morning, and it's, you know, I recommend it in the morning. It's, you know, you're starting your day. Why not, you know, drink from the cup of the Lord before your cup of coffee, so to speak, just to use kind of flowery language there. But furthermore,
flowery, you know, man, you're coming at me with thunder and lightning right now. I am the wake up and I don't even get out of bed. I'm like, kids, I'm like, coffee. And the kids are like, okay, Papa. They bring coffee. I ain't even out of bed. And then I'm tanking it down. And then I'm like jazzed out. I'm like, all right, guys, we're ready to go. So no, you're hitting it right on the head, man. I think for a lot of people, probably. Yeah.
So that's kind of the laying the foundational pieces, right? So am I making this a habit? Then we kind of have to deal with the external realities, right? We live in a world where there's lights and buttons and sounds, right? So are we doing our best to cut that out, right? Is our prayer space something that is free from occasions of distraction, right? So is our cell phone put away? And if it is nearby, is it, you know, is it silent? Is it turned off? You know, are the kids still asleep? Can I sneak 15, 20 minutes there before they come bother me, right? Am I at church? If I'm at church, are there people walking around, right? If that's the case, do I need to close my eyes? Do I, you know, need to kind of remove all these external things, right? Because ultimately, you know, we're entering into something that requires focus. It requires, like we said, you know, it's an act of the intellect, right? So we all know how we best study and work, right? And most of us, that's in silence, right? And so we need to create the same environment as we would effectively study and work, right? And
you know,
so we need to think of it that way.
When I was younger, you know, there were certain habits that when I first became a Christian, I was, you know, raised a Protestant and stuff. When I was an adult and I made this decision, it was pretty dramatic and stuff. There were things that I did that I kind of wish as a Catholic I still did. Like, for example, I would read an hour of the Bible every single night before I went to bed. So I would read about, well, not right before, because I'd follow that up with prayer. And there were times by myself where it could go like 2 hours. And it would be a mix of, you know, vocal prayer, mental prayer. I didn't know what mental prayer was, but I knew how I would imagine the scene. I would imagine the things that I'd been reading. I would place myself there. I would imagine the Lord physically there. If somebody said, "Was he physical?" I'd say, "No, no, I wasn't. Out to lunch or anything." But at the same time, like it was one of those things where it really helped. And some of the things that helped me, and I know that these people may disagree, right? Because silence, I think, is supreme on this. Um, but it's nice. It was nice to have music, for example, like chant. And strangely enough, I would listen to that the Benedictine chant back in the day. It was on CDs and stuff. And so we had that. I mean, we had my dad was a DJ, so we had all this stuff. So I'd listen to that. I had candles in my room. I had incense in my room. I used to burn incense sticks all the time. I'd never been to a Catholic mass. I'd never been to a divine liturgy. Those were, and that was not even part of my social imaginary denominationally my upbringing, but it was something that to me, it made sense. I saw these things in the Bible, candles and incense and singing and praying. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense to me. But those things seem to create an environment that were at least conducive, right? It was at least, it helped me at that time to foster that. Now, I'm glad now that I'm able to enjoy silence. In fact, I don't even listen to music when I do work. I don't listen to music when I'm in the car. I don't listen to music. I try not to listen to it almost at all unless I'm intentionally wanting to, like, I want to listen to this right now. And then I'll do that. Because I found that to be really helpful. But I can imagine that, especially people starting out, it might be helpful to have that kind of thing about them to help foster that environment that they're preparing for. And those have liturgical symbolism as well. That it seems. And last thing I'll say, today I was putting into practice some of the stuff that you wrote about. I'm like, because I'm doing it myself. But I said I'm gonna do this, man. I did the shutting the eyes because people in mass and stuff are all around. I shut my eyes. Man, my son totally thought I was sleeping. He's like, "Papa, what are you doing?" And he's sitting there. I think I had my eyes closed, and you know what? I was loving it. I was having, man. It was a taste of the divine. I was loving it. I was drawing close to the Lord. It was so wonderful to just practice this and just to do it and to be in mass and to be right after we took communion. Just so powerful. And he's sitting there and he's, "Oh, are you falling asleep right now?" So be cautious, everybody, that if you do this, right, don't close your eyes and do it too deeply while you're driving. And maybe if people see you, they might think you're sleeping, and so don't snap at them. Just say, "No, I'm just drawing close to the Lord right now."
Yeah, that's right. It. It's important to say that, for those starting out, if we are so busied and hurried and, we have a tough time mentally slowing down, using those aids such as, incense or soft music, it's a good stepping stone to at least get us into the frame of mind where we can begin to contemplate the Lord, right? Eventually, we do want to get to quiet, right? That's kind of the end goal. But don't be afraid to use those aids, right? Ultimately, and we'll kind of get to this. Actually, we're probably bring it up now with distractions, right? Francis de Sales says, mental prayer, if all you do is fight off distractions and temptations, it's a meditation well made, right? So don't be too concerned. It's you having the intention to enter into time with God that ultimately counts. And if you need help getting there, great, that's awesome. Please go and do that.
And I like how you brought up the difference between a voluntary and an involuntary distraction, and that you can't dodge involuntary ones. That's the whole per definition. Now you can do things that put yourself in a position where it would make it harder not to have that. But at the same time, you're going to endure it. I like, in fact, the quote, I think I put on here the quote from, is it give me a second here, man. I just had it. If in mental prayer, this is of course Saint Francis de Sales. He's the man. I've said before the just how instrumental he was, particularly in my coming to the faith at all as a Catholic. If in mental prayer, we should do nothing else than continuously banish distractions and temptations, the meditation will be well made. And I thought, what a generous and charitable saint. Just say, because I can imagine people, they're like beating themselves up, scrupulous about it and saying, man, I sat there, I tried for a half an hour, and all I could do, I'd have this thing coming up, and I'd try to say no, and then another one comes up, and I felt like the entire time, and he'd look at them and be like, "You did a really good job," and I'm so glad for people like him, and I'm so glad for quotes like that one that you included.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So okay. So we've gone through preparation, right? You have a space, selection of material. We can just quickly say those would be things, spiritual readings, symbols, like you said, right?
Yeah.
Hail Mary.
Yeah. So, as we said, the purpose here isn't to do spiritual reading, right? That's on your own time. This is simply to jog a conversation, right? So it's like not the equivalent of an icebreaker, but it's to provide material for which you to contemplate on and then ultimately bring up to our Lord, right? And there's so many great books on it. So right now I'm actually using Divine Intimacy. This is not a cheap book, but it's beautiful. It has thematical reflections based on the Sunday reading in the old calendar. So it takes the theme from the gospel and it kind of plays it out across the entire week in kind of different ideas. Another good one is Thomas à Kempis, My Imitation of Christ.
Yeah, I have that same little copy. That
is great. And then,
cover. Yeah.
Its cousin, My Meditation of the Gospel. So it kind of, you read passages from the gospel, and then it kind of brings a little bit more into it, kind of for you to jog some ideas, right? And so the purpose in this material, it should be things that are conducive to a conversation with Christ. So the divine intimacy, all these things, kind of bring it first and foremost Christ into your mind, right? Saint Teresa of Avila says the Testament is the most suitable because we should be focusing on the humanity of Christ, right? Ultimately, this is a friendship we're entering to, and as I stated, Christ became incarnate for this reason, for us to have a relationship with God in a way that we can approach it, and for him to become man. And to have humanity is something for us that we shouldn't forget. And in fact, what she proposes here is actually saying that the last thing we should ever consider in our prayer is the omission of contact with Christ and his humanity. And so I'll just jump in here and also state that, yeah, it's very different from spiritual reading, because what the point here is for you to get this seed of something to talk to Christ about, right?
And not just petitions.
Yeah, not just
right,
petitions. Yeah, you're not just asking for stuff, and those are all good and important things and have their time and place. Here we're looking to plant that seed of an episode from Christ's life or a divine truth or something like that, and it's supposed to guide into a conversation. So we're not doing any serious theological study here. We're not contemplating divine truths. What we're doing here is, as I said, just to spur a conversation, right? So what Saint Teresa of Avila kind of uses as an example, I don't know if it's in this section or in the following one, the consideration, but say, for example, the scourging of the pillar of our Lord, right?
Yeah, under the considering the imagination.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But in this case, it provides the material. So here we have a direct episode from the life of Christ that we can contemplate on, and that focuses on his humanity. Divine intimacy, like today's passage, was about the zeal for souls, right? And reading about how that's spurred by divine charity, and anyone that really loves God will ultimately have a zeal for souls to bring those souls into relationship with God. And these are things we can consider as a divine truth. And then this directly jumps into step 3, the consideration of this material. It's supposed to give us ideas, and we start asking these questions, like the traditional who, what, where, why, and how.
Yeah.
We start asking. So, for example, like with the zeal for souls, right? Do I have a zeal for souls? Do I love God enough to recognize that I'm supposed to love the souls of everyone else around me? For example, going back to the scourging of the pillar, we start looking at, okay, well, who was actually performing this scourging, right? Why did they do it? What kind of malice did they have? Who's present? Is the Blessed Mother there? Are his disciples there? Who's all there? You're using these images and these ideas to bring to conversation subsequent. So we're not at conversation yet. This is us kind of gathering material in this cloud.
And I want to say this before going on to another question, that I noticed this in the piece or in the lecture where you were saying that, putting yourself in that scenario in the third person. And what's some of the reasons maybe for that, not to put yourself in there as, like, for example, the one scourging, right? Like, for me, I just thought, because I've done that before, many years ago, I put myself in that place where in my head I was like, because of my sins, you were in this place. And for whatever reason, I started just kind of imagining that I was the one punishing. I was the one lashing the marks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What would be a good reason to not, in fact, do that, but instead to simply put yourself there as almost a third person account of whatever's going on?
Yeah. So we have to have safeguards. So as you often discuss in your series on enthusiasm, there are things that can be taken too far if taken the wrong way, right? So for us to, I think one particular danger, if we're being very specific about the scourging image, it can lead us to be very, sorrow is a good thing, but to kind of take it to a degree that's not healthy, right? So we are acutely aware that it is our sins for which Christ atoned and caused him so much pain and grief, but to continually kind of put ourselves in the place where we're that direct fault is, at least for a beginner, a very dangerous thing that could kind of take us away from the whole purpose of what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah. So, the deeper you get into contemplation, the great mystical saints, they may have engaged in such a practice, but they have a spiritual maturity that can handle that, so to speak.
And directors too.
Yeah.
And they have directors even when they may be doing some direction, right? Directors have their directors. Watchmen have their watchmen.
Yeah, that's right. And so, it's important to have a director, obviously, but when we're just kind of starting out on mental prayer, we kind of want to see ourselves as a fly on the wall. And, I think one thing that our Protestant brothers did really well was the series, The Chosen. It kind of gave us a glimpse into the humanity of Christ as it kind of would have been outside of this strictly biblical sphere. They did a really great job kind of displaying the day in the life of the apostles and of Christ. And it provides really good material for us to kind of just place ourselves in these same episodes and kind of see, maybe Peter would have been kind of hot-headed, right? And Andrew would have been his kind of consoling, cool-headed brother, right? Mm-hmm. Christ would have been charismatic and really friendly and things like that. And so there's these materials that provide a great context for us to just kind of observe the scene as it would have been. And when we speak to Christ, that's where the flip can be made from third person to first person. But the contemplative aspect, this consideration, is the purpose of it is to draw the base of what we're going to talk about. It's
I like doing that
to torture ourselves by placing ourselves as the Roman guard,
as the torturer, violence, right? Yeah, that we end up torturing. I was going to say it's almost sadistic, that it's got this kind of it can be that way, right? Yeah. And so the idea of beginners and how they should begin, and things to say, maybe one day you can get beyond that and you can dabble into this under direction, right? And with great prudence and stuff. I think one of those things that you brought up that is equally helpful, kind of with the same principle, is the idea that you don't have to be eloquent. You know, that you don't have to be gruesome, you don't have to be in the first person thing, but you also don't have to be this remarkable orator, right?
Yeah.
God is not, even if you were really great, I don't know if the Lord would be like, that's really impressive. You know, like he's, you know, and so he just wants you to be you in your own words. And I love how you wrote, nothing more is required, nothing less would be satisfactory.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, we're tempted to, when we have this foundational basis in vocal prayer, many of us Catholics do, these cradle Catholics, we grow up, you know, we have these written prayers that we often refer to. So it's easy for us, these like, thank you, Lord, for bestowing upon me, thou divine presence, and things like that. So we can be flowery, but
Yeah.
you know, that's not the way we talk with our friends. That's not the way we're talking now.
You might
right?
not. I do. I talk. Yeah.
Yeah,
So did George Fox.
Yeah, we
George
LARP,
Fox.
right?
Yeah. I'm all sitting here at the house, dude, talking in King James
but-
English to everybody.
So don't, I mean, you can if that's how
No.
you like to talk, right? But the point is not to be feel pressured to, right?
Yeah,
Again,
right.
Christ, you know, he says so eloquently, you know, I no longer call you servants, but friends.
Yeah.
You know, how do friends speak with each other? How do they talk about important things with each other? You know, sometimes it feels like you're trying to choke out words, right? You're trying to draw something out of your heart, and the only way you can say it is with the most simple words, or even with tears, and even with grief, right? And that's kind of what I write here, that, you know, sometimes words aren't even necessary. And that's not to fall into quietism, but rather it's, you know, I may be feeling profound sorrow, and the only thing I want to say is just to offer my bleeding heart. Or I'm jubilant, and some days, you know, I just want to talk and talk and talk with the Lord. But you know, you can do so without kind of feeling that you have to say the right thing. So
Right.
in my lecture, I provide this example of, you know, this little girl coming back from First Communion and having you know, this prayer in the pew, and her parents asked her after the fact, you know, what was it that you prayed? And she pull up this quote here, if I can find it.
I have it dog-eared, bro.
Okay.
I've got it dog-eared.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Because it's so good. Yeah, right here. Let's see. An example, right?
Yeah.
Is a story of a small girl who, after receiving her first communion, was asked by her parents what she had done when she arrived back at the pew and bowed her head prayerfully. She said, quote, prayed to our Lord for mommy and daddy, for my brother and sister, and then I recited the alphabet to our Lord and told him a ghost story, end quote. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. And that's her heart. I mean, she's not being rude. That's like Saint Therese. That's being the little play ball for the infant Jesus kind of thing, bouncing it around, whacking it against stuff, and just being childlike to him, right? And I loved that. As I said, I have three dog ears in this thing, man. I have three of them. That was one of them, because I said I love it. You know, it reminded me of something my kids would have said, and how I've learned so much from them on how to approach the Lord, because I see in them, I'm like, man, the Lord seems to be approaching them like crazy. they're doing these remarkable things to Dad, you know, over here to Papa, and I'm like, look at how he's using these kids. I'm like, because they're approaching him and they're talking to him, they love him, and they cry out, you know, Abba to him. And I think that there's a part of that gets lost. And you know, about the flowery conversation, David, I think there's a place for it, you know, not at the house. If people do that, you should not. That is not cool. You know, if you're sitting there calling everybody thee and thou and thine. No. But I think it's kind of like certain translations of the Bible that on the one hand wish to make it more contemporary, right? And at the same time to preserve the grandeur and the lyrical nature of it, the poetic magnificence of it, by preserving it in the Psalms and keeping thee and thine and thou and stuff like that. And that there's a role for it, and yet not confining yourself to being like, well, I need to speak in the way, you know, maybe a little bit more Shakespearean, or, you know, like, what do I need to do here? And I think that to get back to that place where Christ wants you to be, that child that approaches, sits on his lap and cries out, Abba. Yeah. And just to reveal your heart to be yourself as you would, to come as you are, and to just let it out. That story, man.
Yeah.
That did it.
Coinciding with that, if you read the Psalms, right? If you actually do read the Psalms, man, they're melodramatic in many places. They're jubilant. They're excitable, and other times they're like lamentations.
Yes.
You can really feel the cry of the heart within the Psalms. And Holy Mother Church has said, this is divinely inspired, and we can take solace in the fact that those cries of the heart are sufficient. They're, if that's what we're feeling that day, let's bring the sorrow to the Lord. If we're feeling triumphant and glorious, and we're glorying with the Lord, let's bring that into prayer.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Right? In the same way you would bring up stuff to your wife, right? There's no walls. There shouldn't be any walls. There shouldn't be any barriers. You talk candidly as you would to a spouse, right? And for us single folk, as you would your best friend, your childhood friend, or even your mother and your father, right? There shouldn't be barriers, thinking you could say the wrong thing or you'll offend someone. It's God who loves you more than anything else, anyone else could ever love you, right? And so as I said, anything less is insufficient.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea that it would prevent you, right? The possible verbal pause or the possible blunder, that would prevent you from communing with God and having an intimate relationship with Him. He'd be kind of like, look, there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do certain things. That's not one of them for this. You're better just to talk. Believe it or not, I just want to talk to you. I made you, for crying out loud. I died for you, for crying out loud. I want you to come and talk to me. I want you to praise me. I want you to ask of me. I want you to just ponder and gaze. And He's allowed to say that. Yeah. He's allowed to say, gaze at me. He's the Lord. And we owe it. We owe Him more than that. So these are like it's like the throwing a quarter at somebody sometimes, I feel. Even when you give it all, it's still not what he deserves. And so just we're not standing in front of a million people trying to sing the national anthem or something. We're before the Lord, and He is way more forgiving, and He's way more desirous to hear you. And He knows you more than those million people would know you on that stage.
That's right.
And He just wants to hear, and He's going to delight if you just speak from your heart. So, last thing, and I want to say, I've loved this, by the way. I've absolutely loved it. You're the third person I've interviewed. Second, I guess you may be the third one that will get. You'll be. I think Friday is when it will go up. I interviewed a buddy of mine, a close friend, interviewed him, but you're the third one, and it's been just, I love it. But you said something at the end, the very, very, very tail end. And it got me all revved up because I'm a media guy. That's what I have my degree in. And so you talk about necessity. No. I'm so sorry. I skipped to the front. Sorry. About, let's see here. Atmosphere.
Yeah.
Atmosphere. And it was within the context ultimately of spiritual reading. Yeah. And it was a quote you have on here. Tell me what you read and I'll tell you what you are. And then you go through and you talk about, and I'll just quote a little bit of it and I'll let you do the rest. You say, we live in a post-Christian culture, in an atmosphere and culture that is increasingly separated from God. And living in such a non-theological environment can make it difficult for us to be in contact with Christ, who is the true purpose of life itself. If we want to remain attached to Christ, we must look to separate ourselves from that atmosphere by surrounding ourselves with a new one. And spiritual reading fills our minds with Christ and His doctrines, giving us a new lens through which to view the world. And the second part, I won't, maybe you can save it, but you can touch on it.
Yeah.
Because you talk about, if we consume secular material, it's okay. But if you're gorging yourself, you're all you can eat of secular nonsense every day. I mean, it's not going to be good for you. You need a well-balanced diet of this with divine food. Mm-hmm. But how even secular mediums, and I like how you use the phrase mediums, secular mediums, how they affect us, and when we're trying to have the mindset and the place of the heart that we ought to have when doing mental prayer. So if you could just touch on that real quick at the end, then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. So I think it comes from this kind of, the materialistic world that we live in, but also this materialistic heresy that we kind of are just influenced by just living in the world, right? So this really great image that I came across recently, we read the scriptures, and we fall into this error of reading it as history or as things that happen, and we tend to put brackets around the supernatural things that happen, right? So say, for example, Christ is walking down the road with his apostles, right? We can clearly vision that, and then as soon as a miracle happens, we put brackets around it and say this is a supernatural thing that may or may not have happened. The scriptures write it this way, and then we close the brackets and we go on to like Christ living this natural life. When we live in this world that bombards us with these materialistic and naturalistic answers to problems that perhaps, most definitely integrate a supernatural reality, we close off, we bracket off the supernatural elements of life, right? So if all we do is read books where the protagonist solves things with his sheer will, and we know it's fantastical, right? Most of the time it's fiction, right? That's what we're reading. We're watching these films with these action stars or Netflix and whatever else. They have problems with marriage. They have problems with their addictions. They have problems with their businesses and whatnot. But we know that these problems, they touch something deeper within us than just the material and natural, tangible aspects of our life, right? They really influence who we are, particularly, problems with marriage or problems with addiction. And so if we're just constantly consuming this diet of materialistic material, when we do fall upon these problems ourselves, our default isn't going to be come to the Lord, because that's not what we've made ourselves to be, right? You are what you eat. You take on the structure of what you are. Yes. If we're consuming, so say, for example, this is where spiritual reading comes into play. So mental prayer has its place. This is spiritual reading providing the context for mental prayer to flourish, right? So if we're reading the lives of the saints, and right now I'm reading The Family That Overtook Christ, and it's a book about Saint Bernard of Clairvaux and his entire family, and it's written in the style of a historical fiction. So there's dialogue.
That's awesome.
There's interplay. Yeah. It's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But here you kind of get a glimpse into how a saint would have spoken, right? How his family would have interacted with each other, and how they talked about God in the context of family life. If you don't know the story of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, he had 6 siblings, 5 brothers and 1 sister. He got all of them to join him in the convent, and some of them were already married. Some of the spouses of those his brothers that were married, they ended up going into the convent as well. So, for example, Bernard of Clairvaux, brother Guy, was married. Yeah. So Guy entered into the convent entered into Clairvaux with Bernard. His wife Elizabeth became the abbess of a cloister, and it's magnificent and marvelous.
Yeah.
But these things supplement the reality that Christ and God and this mystical life are so acutely integrated within our natural life that we have to draw upon. We have to live in this atmosphere. And because our culture doesn't supply it. So, for example, Saint Teresa of Avila, lived in the 1500s in Spain. Catholic revival going on there. The culture was inherently Catholic. So, it's easy to be Catholic by default. But nowadays, no one is Catholic by default, particularly in our times when churches are closing. We have scandals going on in the church. We have to be Catholic on purpose. And so we have to purposefully build this atmosphere around us that allows us and is conducive of a worldview that is supernatural.
I just was talking to my wife right before I connected with you this evening. And I was doing my frenzied thing where I've got this idea, right? And I scramble to get a piece of paper and a pen, and I'm I'm drawing out what I'm saying. I'm saying, you got to understand what I'm talking about. And I'm writing it down. And I was drawing kind of kind of the tree of life, but this would be the tree of schism. So it was about enthusiasm and saying, look at the branches and how these branched off at this time and then these split, but later on they kind of connected and became this own weird thing over here. And I said, but that's only half the story. The other half is in a book that's even bigger. And some people would disagree. I have disagreements with some of the stuff in the book, but I think overall the narrative of the history of how we got from the place where there was a time when it was easy to believe. In fact, it was so easy that it was assumed that you believed. That's how easy it was. It was just an automatic assumption. You believe in God, maybe not my same one, maybe you're a schismatic or something, but the idea that you're going to go, no, I'm just a secular person, or no, I really don't care. That is practically unfathomable, right? They can't even fathom this. And we got to the place where now you have to be intentionally so. And we got to the place where now it's like, really, you're a Christian, you're a Catholic, you go and do this and that. And that book is called Secular Age, and by Charles Taylor. It's a massive tome. It's actually about 2 times the size. When I told my wife, I said I'm going to talk about it, I said I'm going to do a series. She's like, that's 2 times the size of Enthusiasm, Jeremiah. I said, I know it is, but it helps us get to this place because central to the book, it touches on something you just said. And that is that we live now in a world that is so secular that unless we have these things somehow integrated and somehow as part of our life, then we are on the constant diet of secular things and we bracket the spiritual. Charles Taylor says that we lived in a time before where it was porous, that there was the transcendent and there was ordinary time, so to speak, but that there was a constant flow of these things. It was in a liturgical cycle that has repetition, but yet moving forward at the same time. Mystery. It's a mystery, right? So, to that degree, people were influenced by the divine, the social imaginary that they had about what's acceptable, what are you called to do, what would be permittable for you to do if you felt like you were called to do it, that sort of a thing. That it was in connection with the divine, and solutions where you have a problem, well, you need to get on your knees about that. You should go to talk to a priest about that. And nowadays they're like, well, maybe, go and do some drugs, or go, not always. I don't want to throw everybody under the bus about that, but that self-help, right? We live in a day and age of, well, why don't you look it up on Google? Yep. Google that thing. And that's about it. And one of the things that we've decided as a family to help us get back to that place, to intentionally foster that social imaginary that brings this back, like St. Bernard, is to say, start speaking about the saints not just as relics in the past, and specifically your hermits and monks and nuns and priests and bishops and the like, that because that their function in our modern society is almost like it's kind of over there. It doesn't have as important of a role within the mindset, even of most Catholics now, as it did before. Yeah. And so, to say, how do we make that so even within the mindset of our children, the mindset of our family, that dynamic is part of the social imaginary, and it helps to foster an awareness of the reality that we've lost. It's still there, but we're not recognizing, and that is that our reality is porous, and that there's the transcendent, there's the divine, and there's also ourselves in a way that's a mix of things, right? And that this is what would help us, not only in preserving those traditions, but also in finding ourselves on our knees with our eyes shut, contemplating the passion of our Lord in a state of mental prayer.
Yes. I find the most fruitful to be any works of the lives of the saints. What's funny is, prior to my St. Paul kind of momentous conversion, I didn't even know saints wrote books. I was shocked that it's so stupid because any secular person can write a book. So why I don't know why I didn't think a saint could write one. But one of the most beautiful autobiographies I read recently was the autobiography of St. Charles of Sèze, put out by Mediatrix Press. It's a Franciscan mystic from the 17th century who was a stigmatist as well. But he so candidly writes about, prior to his entry into the Franciscan order, his struggles with his vices, so candidly recalling how he struggled with purity, so candidly struggling about how he suffered, to pray. Right, Saint Teresa of Avila writes herself that, sometimes she would even be clock watching in the time that she was supposed to do mental prayer. She just couldn't enter into it. And so reading the lives of the saints kind of gives us into a window saying, these people are like me. I have vices. I struggle to enter into mental prayer. But the difference is, they just kept trying, and they built this fortress around themselves, right? Some of them entered religious life. Some of them just said, I'm not engaging in this sinful life anymore. And we know we need to do the same thing. So how does this materially look like? How do we remove the atmosphere of the secular life, right? As you're saying, as you had mentioned, you don't listen to music in the car anymore, right? A lot of modern music is garbage.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. If you're going to listen to music, classical, get into classical, right? Polyphony, beautiful stuff. Or even, or choose your material more carefully, right? What kind of films do you watch? Should you purge some of the films that you're watching that promote certain vices as just willy-nilly, when your sensus fidelium is pointing you in a different direction, right? Do you need to cancel cable? Do you need to cancel Netflix? Are we really being intentional about building this atmosphere of a Catholic life?
Yes. And some of it as easy as, I said, become familiar with maybe local nuns and stuff, like go to the convent, go and talk to the, people in the religious orders and stuff, get to know them, be in their places. But sometimes it's as easy as getting stuff out of your life too. And not just simply getting stuff in, but sometimes getting it out will create that space necessary and that time necessary for you to do it, including, of course, the space and time to do mental prayer. I appreciate it, brother, man. Now, David, if there's any way, if people have questions, and I hope that they do, I hope that people don't treat this just like an intellectual exercise, right? That they say, look, I want to do this. And if they have questions, or if they would like to have you come and speak, if they'd like to have you come and speak at their parish or their group, what's the best way that people can reach out to you after the show?
Oh, man. Well, you'll have my name.
Smoke signals. You want some? Yeah, I'm throwing it out. There's the easiest question of the night, man. Come on.
Yeah, you have my name.
That's contact you.
Find me on the Facebook. Okay. Otherwise, that's probably the easiest way. If you find me, get in touch with me. My cover photo is obviously something really Catholic. I've pulled away from Twitter. Again, it's one of those things I had to get rid of to create a Catholic atmosphere. Same with Instagram. I'm no longer there. Yeah. But you just reach out to me that way if you want to send me a message. But otherwise, just some closing thoughts, because obviously, we've sold a really nice bill of goods. Mental prayer sounds amazing. And in your enthusiasm to get started, the devil will use that against you. Right? So be really careful. Yeah. And my spiritual director gave some really sage advice. Don't go for more than 10, 15 minutes when you're starting out. Because when you start out, you're saying you're going to get consolations. The Lord's going to love the fact that you are praying, and you're going to experience the emotional highs. But you're going to be tempted to go for longer than you should. You're going to be tempted to go for an hour, 2 hours in your first couple times. But that's not sustainable, right? Given that you live in the world, you have responsibilities. Sometimes you're going to wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and it's hard. So do 10, 15 minutes. Start there. And progressively add more, just like working out. Right? Yes. You're not going to start squatting 250. Yeah. Benching 150, right? You got to start with a little weight and interspace it out and progressively go. Yeah. So that's wise. That's wise, be careful. Buddy. Yeah, be careful of that temptation to go too hard, too quickly, because we know that just on a natural level, anytime we enthusiastically jump into things, we bite off more than we can chew. Yeah. And Saint Alphonsus Liguori says very astutely. I think I had a quote in my lecture here, but he says that, here it is. Let us remember that the devil labors hard to disturb us at the time of meditation, in order to make us abandon it. Let him then who omits mental prayer on account of distractions, or in this case, biting off more than we can chew. Be persuaded that he delight to the devil. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're entering
Yeah.
you're entering this exercise of mental prayer. Remember why
it's an octagon. It's an octagon.
Yeah.
But
remember why
we're
doing this, right? We're
right.
entering it to get a foretaste of heaven now. To enter into that relationship which we will eventually be in perpetually, God willing. Right? So if we're going to jump into it, let's do it right. Let's do it slowly and recognize that we're fostering a habit that'll last us an eternity.
Perfecto mundo, my bro.
Beautiful.
Perfecto mundo. Super glad to have you, man. Well, dude, we're definitely in the future. We shall have you back. We shall have you back.
God willing.
And
solely
Lord willing, of course. That's, I think I should put that just at the beginning of everything I do. Just Lord willing, everything I say about the future, right? like, because it's my wish. It's my wish, man, and I'm just really glad that we connected. I'm really glad that you shared this. I'm really glad that you took the time to come on to the show. I'm glad you've followed the show, that you enjoy it, and that you bought the book, man. You're part of the Yellow Book Club, dude. Yes, look at that. I love it. I love it. So, all right, buddy. Well, I hope you have a good one. And if anybody does, if they still don't know how to get a hold of them, they can't find them anywhere, or they're not on any of the social media platforms, and you know what? Bravo for you. That would be, that's in fact most ideal, in fact. But if you want to send me something, you can, of course, send me. I am on Telegram, right? I am on there. And I am, you can send it to paleocratdiaries@gmail.com. So until next time, my friend, God bless you, buddy.
God bless.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.
All right. What did you think about that, by the way? What did you think about that? Hold on, let me get this off this audio thing. Yeah, still dealing with it. Still dealing with it. Not now. Not now. Oh no, but I think I've got to deal with it here in a second, or else I'm not going to hear anything, because the show's over, guys and girls. And by the way, I need to say this, okay? I need to say this in the Wolfpack chat, okay? If you're not a part of the Wolfpack chat, you got to go down in the description below this video, click on it. Telegram is a free app. It is very engaged. It's like this live chat. By the way, I love you guys, all of you, girls, guys, all of you. Love you like crazy. It was awesome to see all the different people in this live chat. It was awesome to see the kind of engagement that we have in the live chat, right? Of course, it's great to know that you're not talking to nothing. I'm in a weird place. I'm in a room that's like by myself. I got lights and lamps everywhere and a camera and notes and all this stuff, and I'm talking at a Canon camera right now, right? An SL3. I'm kind of like by myself. But to see the people in there, and to see the questions, to see the compliments, to see the level of engagement, how people are truly becoming friends. If you like that, if that's the sort of thing you really enjoy, you have to become a member. It's totally free. All you do is you get the app and you find Paleocrat Diaries Wolfpack Chat. In fact, as I said, I've got the link in the description below. But somebody in the chat, right, CC, brought up something really important, okay? Said, speaking of mental prayer, do you happen to talk about people with aphantasia, no mind's eye? Mental prayer is difficult for those of us with this condition. Any tips? That, I was so glad. In fact, I wrote this, and I just want to read it. This is a great question, isn't it? By the way, and I love how thoughtful, I mean, in this individual's case, they happen to have this. But the mere fact that this question comes up is so important. I said, that's a great question. I think I mentioned my brother, and as I was listening, I think I was wrong about that. I wasn't sure, who has a closed head injury. And if I did, then it would have been in the context of people with disabilities that make prayer, as we understand and practice it, very difficult, maybe even impossible. But that might have been in another episode. Either way, okay, I'm hoping that David will be in the live chat, and he had to work, so he's back and forth, to address any questions, and I'll try my best to remember to bring this up, and I'm doing it now. Because like I said, it's an excellent question, and it's something that most people don't even think about. Plus, I take the issues and concerns like these very, very seriously, especially because they often hit on thoughts and methods that may prove beneficial even for people like my brother. Again, Thank you for asking about this. It's something that I've often wondered. And as I was listening, I had this question in mind. And in fact, just today, I believe listening in real time, CC responded to David in the Wolfpack, because David's there. So if you wanna reach out to him, he's Pax Domini, Cholewa in there. And so he said, CC said, "Thank you so much for that helpful and thoughtful comment. That is the way I pray," talking about using images, even icons and crucifixes, to use these things. I also sometimes look at an image or painting to help me focus. I personally think this condition is a blessing from God. There are many sins that I am shielded from, since I see nothing in my head, and I live in the here and now. And below that, thanks for everything, Wolfpack. And I want to say thank you. You know, growing up with my brother, it's the last thing I'll say. Growing up with my brother, you know, we were really involved in the special needs community. And I've told stories before about how the Special Olympics had a lasting impression on my life, a lasting impact on my life. My brother has had a dramatic impact on my life. Stories of Christmas and how he viewed receiving gifts when I would be, you know, all grumpy and ungrateful for what I got. You know, maybe it was a gold watch. I got a gold watch, a real one. My grandma got it for me. And she got me that, and she got me a sleeping bag, which I ended up using for years. Okay, so, but I was ungrateful because none of that stuff, not a single thing, was on the list, and I wrote the list. She's like, write your list, and I'm like, okay, and I'm all pumped about it. I'm scribbling it down. Nothing. I got nothing from that list that year, and I was so upset about it. Right? I was so upset, and I look over my brother. He gets this nightlight. And it's this small thing. It's a plastic nightlight. It's a Crayola crayon nightlight. And I don't know if I've ever seen anybody ever more excited about anything maybe than that. He went around, he's showing people, he's putting it in their face and, hey, look at this. And he's all happy about it. And he's psyched. And the whole night he's holding on to this thing. And here I am in that corner, all crumpled up, sad and cranky, like a goon. And I learned to be grateful. And I learned from him, seeing him, and even, you know, he has a hard time reading. So reading comes tough. He has a hard time even speaking. He had a trach in his neck for 20 years. So he has a hard time with that. We had to learn. I didn't do as well as my mom and sister, but we had to learn some basics in sign language. And so we were around even that community and kind of immersed ourselves in it, you know. But he has a hard time reading, and yet we would go to church, and he's Orthodox now, right? Him and my mom, they're both Eastern Orthodox. And so I've been to their divine liturgy before. I was at a Pascha service, and there he is. I have a video on the Wolfpack chat of my brother and my mom as they're walking around in procession around the church. And to see him worship, to see him engage in a relationship with God, to see tears flowing down his face, it's one of those things, you know. Somebody brought up in the chat, they brought up, how do we deal with mask mandates and stuff like that? You know, when breathing is an important part even of, you know, your practice of Catholic meditation and free breathing, stuff like that. And I thought to myself, and I said, with great intention, in fact, it's one of those things. It's like a blessing and a curse that says, you know, with great intention, you overcome the same thing with people on their deathbeds as they're suffocating, and yet having a saintly peace about them. It doesn't come easy. It's not a free ride. The conditions aren't all set there, but you give it everything you got. And I felt that way about my brother and the way he worships and the way he communes with God, the way he just genuinely, passionately loves the Lord. And I remember a person, I'm going to try not to cry. I remember a person at church one time. She's an enthusiast par excellence, right? She's the terrible child of this. And she's in the church, name it, claim it, tag it, bag it, flab it, grab it crowd, right? She's part of that. And she was talking to us, to my family. And she was saying that, talking about how the reason why this stuff happened to my brother, he was 6 years old when he was in his accident. And I have a video online, so I'm not going to share it here. I have a video online of a speech that I gave on Valentine's Day. And that was one of the topics I talked about, how my mother showed me what it meant to love by the way that she raised my brother. But he was in a car accident at age 6, never came back the same. Went to go get a haircut, that was it. And he doesn't come back the same, in a coma. I was a kid, 10 years old, hearing conversations in the house, tearful conversations, prayerful conversations about whether or not they should pull the plug. But none of that, all of that paled in comparison to being in front of this woman, very popular in our church at the time, who said that it's because of sin in our life that God punished us with my brother's accident. It was not a punishment. It was not a punishment. For one, God's not a monster like this woman. Secondly, I've watched as my brother growing up all these years that he has certain deficiencies and difficulties. He can't conceptualize things the same way. But I'll tell you now what I told her. I said, my brother is better than you. My brother's better than me. My brother is better than almost everybody I know. He has a childlike innocence. He doesn't lust. He doesn't steal. He doesn't envy. There's no wrath. All these things that we struggle with, all these things that we have a hard time with, all these things that could keep us from the pearly gates, all of those things, my brother doesn't deal with those the same way. And yet, my brother has intimate communion with God. Intimate communion. The kind that sits there, and I've often wondered what it is. I've often wondered how. But I see it. And so it's been instructive to me. You don't have to have everything downloaded. It's good to have the information in your head. It's why we do the show. But at the end of the day, my brother's not going to write this huge theological treatise, right, on prayer. He's not going to do it. But I'll tell you what he will do. He'll close his eyes. He'll raise his hands to heaven, and he will love his Father. He will worship him. He will commune with him. He will bask in his presence and be grateful. Yeah. My brother's better than that woman. My brother's better than me. And I hope that this episode, I know that it was longer. And I know we didn't talk about Montanism. And remember, you have to go to paleocratdiaries.com today. I'm going to post that. As soon as I'm done here, what I'll do, I'll just create a video for an upcoming live stream, toss a thumbnail on it. Won't even put much of a description. Just toss a thumbnail on it. And then share that unlisted video, share that over at paleocratdiaries.com. It'll become active and public once the video goes. But I really want people to go. I want them to be able to sign up to say, look, I want to see this. It's the second to last episode in our series. After this is a short chapter, actually, and we'll do a little recap and stuff on Corinthians. We're back to the source. We're back to the beginning. But I hope that in this episode that you have been equipped with the tools necessary to deepen that relationship that you have with the Lord, and to realize the importance, the centrality, right? The requirement upon us that we have to pray, and to pray always, and to learn how. It's a daunting task, right? How do you do that? It's actually easier than a lot of people might think. And maybe it's us. Maybe we're the ones who make it really hard. And the saints pave the way, don't they? I'm really grateful for all of you. I'm grateful for David. You've helped to make me the best me I've ever been. Not saying a lot, but it is for me. And for that, I'm grateful. All right. Oh no, I can't even hear the music. Oh, that back and forth nonsense. Back and forth nonsense. Ah, there we go. All right, make sure, go check out the Saintmaker right now. Okay, it logs in. I know if you've been there. I know because it shows me how many people have been there. So it better not be zero. It better not be zero. And check it out. If you love it, and I hope you do, then order it. If you need to pre-order it for Christmas, pre-order it for Christmas. Right? Somebody bought one not only for themselves, but for their wife, and then they're going to give it to their wife, have her wrap it, and give it back. But there's two. They bought two. And so I'm excited about that. And I hope that it benefits you in the same way that it's benefited me. Because it's huge. It's impacted my life, even me and my wife. Right? So it's been really good. And if you want to connect with David, if you enjoyed what he said, go to the Paleocrat Diaries Wolfpack chat on Telegram. He is Pax Domini. Make sure to give a big shout out to him, right? And I hope to see you there. We post a bunch of cool stuff all throughout the week, right? Videos, audios, songs, links, just chatting for fun. Private DMs, all of that available. Telegrams, Paleocrat Diaries, Wolfpack chat. What else do I gotta say? What else do I gotta say? Oh yeah, I'm gonna be with Kennedy Hall at 4 o'clock? From 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Crusade Channel. That's happening today. Your boy's gonna be on for many hours today. Right? This is the Maniac Madman Maya edition, right? It comes and goes. Until next time, my friends. Tonight, never give up. Keep on smiling. And memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.